There it is.
I'm watching my computer countdown. Okay, here we go. 8:15. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Metropolitan Utility District's committee meeting this morning, March the 3rd, 2021. This meeting is being live streamed from the boardroom of the M.U.D headquarters building located at 7350 World Communications Drive, and a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the M.U.D website after the meeting's conclusion. I'd like to announce that due to the Governor's extended executive order suspending in-person meeting requirements under the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, board members are able to participate remotely if they so choose. This extension will remain in effect until April 30th, 2021. I'd like to say myself, Mike McGowan, Tanya Cook, and Glenn Howard are participating remotely, and the other board directors are at the building. I'd like to remind those attending in person at the boardroom today that we must abide by the City Council ordinance requiring that all those attending in person today wear a face mask or a face covering or maintain 6-foot distancing from one another in indoor public settings in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This ordinance will remain in effect until May 25th, 2021. Now I'd like to invite our Vice President of Safety, Security, and Business Continuity, Shane Hunter, to provide a briefing regarding protocol for those individuals in attendance at the board meeting today in the event of an emergency. Shane?
Good morning. Shane Hunter, Vice President of Safety and Security. We are located on the first floor of the M.U.D headquarters. It is severe weather awareness month, so for this room, the severe weather shelter is directly outside this door in the corridor. If we need to evacuate this room for any reason, we'll go through that same door and take 2 lefts and meet up in the parking garage where we'll have accountability. Also in the hallway, you'll find the fire extinguisher, the first aid kit, and the AED. Should there be a medical emergency, Zach Valentine, security manager, will meet first responders and bring them into the room. And that concludes the briefing.
Thank you, Shane. Roll call, please.
Frost.
Here.
McGowan.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Kavanaugh.
Here.
Bagley.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
French.
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to advise all those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall in the boardroom. Construction and operations. Mr. O'Brien, will you review capital expenditures?
Certainly. Good morning, everybody. Corey O'Brien, Vice President of Engineering and Construction and Interim Chief Operations Officer. I guess I'd like to begin by saying Happy March. It's going to be a nice day, and I'd be remiss given my last name if I didn't wish everybody a early Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Good for you.
Behind tab 5 this morning, we have our capital expenditures letter. There are 6 projects on the letter, and I'll be speaking just to you about 3 of them this morning. If you'll turn to page 2, items 1 and 3 under building plants and equipment are related to one another. I'll speak about them jointly. We are proposing to purchase 4 kubota tractors and associated trailers. This particular piece of equipment is a smaller piece of equipment but heavily used by the construction division. It articulates in the middle. It has a sliding backhoe attachment on the back of it. It's very versatile. It is a workhorse for our construction crews. Our fleet currently has about 22 of these pieces of equipment in them, and this purchase, if approved, would replace 4 of the oldest units. And so it is a critical piece of equipment for our crews. If you'll turn to page 3, I'd like to speak about item 5. This is a $880,000 request for professional services to develop the Platte South Capital Improvement Plan. The Platte South plant went into service in 1968, and at age 53, it's now ready for a complete review of all of its systems and facilities. In my letter, I had a fairly comprehensive list of things that will be evaluated under this project. I would like to speak to 2 of them in particular, though, as those 2 items not only relate to Platte South, but also to Platte West. The first being climate change impacts on river flows. As we saw in 2019, high river flows can have a very adverse effect on our well fields. So we're very interested in having this topic studied over the next several decades to help us identify primarily in wet weather conditions risks associated with our well fields, and that will in turn help us to design well field flood resiliency efforts into our projects. The second item that affects both Plat West and Plat South would be the residuals treatment evaluation. And again, another topic that we want to have options, known options available to us as potentially regulations change or as conditions change. So it's another important area that we want to have studied. I think we'd all agree probably that we've seen great value from our Florence capital improvement plan that we're well into and we talk about on a regular basis. We see the Plat South CIP as a similar high-value project, providing a really valuable roadmap, not only for planned maintenance, but also for planned improvements as we go forward. And it really does afford us some improved financial planning as well. I would note that approval of this CNA will authorize the President to enter into a professional services agreement with the consultant team of Burns & McDonnell and HDR. And we feel very fortunate to have this experienced team available to us for this project. As you know, HDR has very extensive knowledge of our facilities and our operations, including the Plat South. Burns & McDonnell has been our well field consultant for many years and provides expertise in that field. The intimate knowledge that this team brings to this project, they have intimate knowledge about our facilities and operations, and that's going to be very valuable for the success of this project. I would like to speak just briefly about how we selected this team. We chose to negotiate with this team based on our recent experience going out for a request for qualifications back in early 2020 for the Water System Master Plan. As you may recall, we sent out requests for qualifications to 4 consultants and ACEC, which is American Council of Engineering Companies, and we only received 1 response, and that was from HDR. And in following up, we talked about this previously, but we followed up with the firms that did not provide qualifications, and they simply indicated that for planning type projects, they could not compete with HDR's knowledge, breadth, and depth about district facilities and operations. So based on that experience, we decided to negotiate with this team of HDR and Burns & McDonnell to come up with a plan for this project, as it is another planning type project, because both CIPs or water system master plans require a definite knowledge base for the utility, and they have that for us. So, but as we look forward to future projects where design work is actually incorporated, we would certainly go back to our RFQ process, as it has proven valuable in the past, just not so much so on planning type projects. Now, we would estimate that this CIP project will take about a year to complete, be done in early 2022, but we would hope to have some valuable feedback as we even go into the budget planning process for later this year. Later this year for 2022. That's all I have to speak about on the letter. Are there any questions about any of the items on our letter this month?
Hey, Corey, when we replace tractors and backhoes, what happens to the old ones? Are they traded in or are they auctioned off? Do we get any kind of residual value out of those?
That's a great question. Typically, they are sold at auction, and we have been realizing some better returns on that equipment. I mean, we do tend to keep our stuff quite a while, but we also tend to do a good job of maintaining it. So we do get some salvage value out of those, and they are routinely sold at auction.
Is the auction conducted, how is notice given? Is it put on our website, or how do we advertise that auction?
My information is probably a little dated. That's how we used to do it, but I maybe ask John Zellers or Andy Melville just to weigh in on what we're currently doing for auction, as I know it's changed recently.
Corey, I have a question about the general improvement plan. I'm assuming that we have some sort of plan that we are using on an ongoing basis, and that we don't wait 53 years and then put out for somebody to come in and give us a plan. I guess that I want to understand a little bit more about how we get here.
Sure, you're correct, Director Cook. There's always been a definite level of planning going on. It's been less formal than in a comprehensive written plan. Certainly the directors of the plants and management continually look at our needs and try to see those far enough in the future. So it has been a managed process over the years, but I think with our experience with the Florence CIP, we see a lot of value in having a written plan that the whole company can understand, and it's a much better way to communicate and formalize that process that's been going on in the past, just less formally.
And Corey, let me chime in and say, when we do our budgets every year, capital budgets, even though we approve for 1 year, I think we look out ahead 3 to 5 years for capital expenditures, so we get something on the plate. So our folks out in Platte South, they're looking ahead and they're looking at maintenance and what we need to do to keep that facility running as best we can. But this is going to provide a comprehensive plan and overview, and like he's roll in things that we don't have the expertise, like climate change and some of those other things that we need to know for long-range planning.
That is correct. And Mike, yes, our budget process does go out 5 years, and we try to put things on the radar 5 years out, and it certainly helps us as we move through those years. Most things, stay on, but some things fall off, and it does help us to plan better.
Does that help you, Tony?
Andy?
Just the narrative in the report could read as though, oops, here we are 53 years in, and I know that's not true, but I wanted to get an idea of what we're doing on an ongoing basis, recognizing that things like climate change are something you may have to just go back to the drawing board about.
That's correct. Yeah, you're correct. I'm glad we clarified that point, but no, the plant directors, the plant staff, and management watch that closely. You're correct.
Mark Doyle, President. Could I put a little commentary on top of this topic, Director Cook?
Please.
We've developed a capital improvement plan for the Florence plant that goes back maybe a decade, and that was discussed and was brought to the table as we completed the Platte West water treatment plant, knowing that not only do we need a third water plant to complete what we call the triangle of reliability with our distribution system, we knew that now we will have an opportunity to do what we need to do, and that's to initiate a wholesale, comprehensive plan to bring the Florence water treatment plant, which is over 100 years old now, up to standard as best we can. It's still an outdoor water treatment plant, and you wouldn't build one that way these days, but it's our only surface water plant extracting from the Missouri River. We also knew that we would eventually need to initiate a comprehensive plan to renovate, and it might not be the right word, but to update and bring the Platte South water treatment plant, which was brought online in the 1970s. And incidentally, HDR, along and in partnership with Kirk and Michael Associates, designed that plant in those days. And that is a groundwater plant under the influence of surface water, which is a special designation because it requires a different type of regulation. And then we brought on the Platte West water treatment plant, which is truly a groundwater plant. So we've had things come up over the years with Florence or with Plat South that I've questioned, similar to what you're asking, Director Cook. We had a massive electrical upgrade that we need to initiate, and the floods came along and we're delayed on that. We have a well rehabilitation plan because we were always bringing wells up to speed in a onesie, twosie manner from the board's perspective. Staff might know what they need to do and bring it to us each year, but it looked like a surprise to me as a board member and now as president. So I've asked Corey, and prior to that, Dave, along with Doug Whitfield in this case, to bring a capital improvement plan for the Plat South plant, just like we did with Florence, so we can plan better. We're probably going to do the same upgrades that we would have done in a onesie, twosie fashion, but this is a more comprehensive view so we can plan, budget, and all the things that we need to do with you as a policy-making body and me as a senior manager here. So it really has come along at the insistence of management to say we need to have our eyes open of what we're going to need with that plant 5, 10, 20, 30, and 50 years down the road. And we need all three of our water plants. And it's not necessarily for growth. It's for reliability and water quality and all of those things that we owe to our customers. So those are great questions, and that's a great observation. Does that kind of puts my spin on top of it? Fair?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey,
Okay.
Corey, you said this will take, it'll be completed probably in early 22. Will we have projects in the 22 capital budget that we'll look at for approvals this fall and December when we go through capital budgets?
That's a little on the bubble. Probably if I had to answer hard, I'd say probably not. But I mean, if there's, as we go through this, if there's something identified that we can and feel should, then we're going to consider that. But given where we're at, that it's March already, and we start budgeting here in the next 3 to 4 to 5 months, it's probably a little doubtful for projects in 22.
Okay, just curious on timing. And then the other thing is, just like Florence, we've had bond issuance. This is a multi-year project, a good long-term project. Are we going to finance this with a bond issuance?
Yeah, and I'm going to let Joe correct me if I misspeak. I mean, the project itself to do the CIP would not be bonded, but the projects that spin out of the CIP to do improvements, actual design and replacements and those kind of things would likely be part of a bond issuance. Joe, am I on target there?
Yes. Good morning, Joe Schaffert. I serve as the Chief Financial Officer for the district. That is correct, Corey. Director McGowan, when we did the 2021 budget, and in fact later on in the agenda we have some bond reimbursement resolutions, the planned Water Department bond issuance for 2021 does include some dollars related to Plat South. In light of the fact that the CIP hasn't been done, I would call them placeholders. But with that said, some of the projects that had been previously called out in a 5-year view of a capital budget will undoubtedly be wrapped into this CIP. So it's not as if we have no idea what projects will result from the CIP. I think it'll just be a more systematic and comprehensive view than perhaps what we were able to do previously in light of some of the environmental types of things that will be reflected. But we'll absolutely bond this. As you know, on the water side, Director McGowan, we do have more debt than we do on the gas side. We'll exit the year with $211.9 million in debt outstanding on the water side. But when we do the budget, we're very mindful of the liquidity concerns in terms of what a bond covenant would require in terms of available cash to service debt. So that's all reflected when we do a 5-year view of the budget and the associated bonding contained therein.
Okay, thank you. What I'd like to ask a favor too, when we do our budget, capital budget this fall for 2022. We've got several bond issues now. We got water bond issues. We've got gas issues. We're going to do 2 more bonds in June. Now we're talking about maybe a bond on this Plat South. I would like to see a spreadsheet or just a summary sheet of all the outstanding bonds, line by line, how much it is, and what our debt requirements to pay down our debt each year is, so that we can see how much we're financing long-term and how much that cost is per year on interest.
I have that very schedule in front of me. I can send it to the board.
Oh, that'd be great.
Hey, Joe, this
Fast.
is Jim. Quick question. Phase 5 of the Florence renovations, when is that due to sunset or to be completed? I think we talk about this every month, and I just need a reminder.
Corey, do you know the specifics of that, or Doug or Masa?
Yeah, sure. And Masa, correct me if I misspeak, but Director Begley, I think we just started phase 4, which is a
Phase 4,
5-year
okay.
phase, and phase 5 is on paper, but I think there's a lot of reevaluation that's going to go on around phase 5 type activities. So we have some years to go yet as part of the formal Florence CIP.
So it's conceivable that we will be completing phases 4 and 5 at Florence while we're starting the CIP, implementing the CIP at Platte South. Does that sound?
It's very likely, yes.
Okay.
There was a outstanding question to Andy or John Zellers about the current format of auctioning. Did one of you weigh in?
Sure. Good morning. This is Andy Melville, Vice President of Field Service Operations. And we currently utilize an online auction to sell our used equipment. And right now we're using Public Surplus, which is a nationwide auction house. And we've basically we've sold equipment throughout the nation, and it's been very successful. Prior to that, we had another auction service, and a number of years ago, we used to partner with OPPD in an in-person auction. Those are kind of a thing of the past, and the online auction really gives us a good spread throughout the country, and it's been successful. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks, Andy. How is it advertised? How does one know when one of the auctions is going to take place, and how?
Sure. Public Surplus, like I said, is a nationwide organization, and they have basically online auctions, website ads. I believe John can chime in as well if this is linked off our website as well. I'm not sure on that answer.
Okay, that's kind of what I was mainly asking, is if we link it to our website, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions on capital expenditures?
Thank you, Corey.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Hen will review the acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates, please.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. Good morning. Stephanie Hand, Director of Plant Engineering. I will be addressing the finals letter behind tab number 6. We have 5 finals this month, 1 gas IR project, 3 water development projects, and 1 plant project, and I will be discussing briefly 3 of these this morning. I'd like to begin with item A on page 1 with Q3 contracting. Q3 has been our gas infrastructure partner since 2012. This was roughly a $1.2 million project near 68th and Pacific. As you know, paving, removal, and replacement tends to be one of the largest portions of a IR project that causes quite a bit of cost to the project. We're very excited about this project, that it was originally designed to be under paving. Due to some changes that were made in the field before we even got there, we were able to move this main outside of paving, and we're proud to say we saved approximately $442,000 on this project in paving costs. This project abandoned approximately 3.1 miles of cast iron gas pipe. I'd also like to address item B with roll-off construction. This was a unique water development project near 144th and Pacific. This was the property that was previously owned by Boys Town. You might remember the West Farm project that was in the newspaper. This project development began in 2017 and 2018, but part of the work was delayed until 2020. The contract was originally approved in early 2018, and so due to these delays by the developer and a change to their schedule, This caused a change order of approximately $129,000. The developer is paying these change in schedule costs, but this change order was a result of that. This was approximately a $1.8 million project, and approval of this final will also approve the change order on this project.
So does the developer, does the developer paying for this project then?
They are fitting most of the money for this project. We did do a little bit of upsizing for the mains, which was district cost, but the majority of it was paid for by the developer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to address item E with Hawkins Construction. This was the phase 3 of the chemical building improvements at Florence. This was part of the CIP project. This is an approximately $22.7 million project renovating the district's chemical building at Florence. This included electrical upgrades, HVAC, some structural, architectural, and civil improvements, as well as new chemical feed systems to our process systems, changes in the lab, and administration improvements also. This nearly $23 million project came in only 2.7% over the contracted amount. And with that, I am glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Phelps, will you review the bids on materials and concretes, please?
I certainly will. Good morning.
Good morning.
Don Zellers, Vice President, Procurement and Enterprise Services. Bids on materials and contracts may be found under tab 7. I do plan to discuss all items on the letter this morning as the letter is rather brief. The first 2 items are on page 1. The board may recall approving the purchase of 8 Kubota R430 articulating tractors last October and 8 14,000-pound trailers to haul them with back in November. Kubota is the only provider of the articulating tractor with backhoe that Mr. O'Brien spoke about earlier. Their bid represents a 1.6% increase in price since the purchase in October. Last October, we accepted bids for the 8 14,000-pound trailers, in which we received 5 bids. Dual Lift provided the lowest bid that met specifications and was awarded the contract. Dual Lift is currently manufacturing the 8 trailers and can add the additional 4 into production such that we can receive them all by July. Due to increases in steel pricing, Dual Lift's bid for the additional 4 trailers represents a $475 increase per trailer. Even with the additional cost, Dual Lift's bid is $740 per trailer less than the second lowest bid that we received in October. We are recommending approval of both Kubota of Omaha's and Dual Lift's bids. The last item may be found on page 2. We are recommending an extension with Core and Main for our annual supply of ductile iron pipe. Though ductile iron pipe pricing has increased almost 10% over the last year, we were able to negotiate with Core and Main to hold pricing through March of 2022. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Did you say there were 4 tractors and 4 trailers, or 8? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that correctly.
Yeah, so on this board letter, there are 4 that we're asking for approval for purchase, but these are identical to 8 that we purchased back in October and November of 2020.
Oh, I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, John, on the ductile water pipe, how many miles do we get for 1.7 million?
About 54,000 feet of various sizes and various end configurations.
And where do we store it?
We store it at our 63rd Street location in our service yard.
Okay.
Now we don't buy all 54,000 feet at one time. We purchase as needed. So that is the estimate is based off of past usage.
Okay. I was kind of curious, if you bought it all at once, where do you put it and store it? But you buy it as you need it.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, thank you.
Okay. Mr. O'Brien, will you review the proposed main extensions, please?
Certainly. Corey O'Brien, Vice President, Engineering and Construction, and Interim Chief Operations Officer. Behind tab 8 is our main extension letter for the month. It's a short letter, and I'll be very brief on this. We have 2 projects 2 gas projects on our letter. The impact of those projects is 300 single residence lots. If you look at the map, you can see that we have one project in subdivision 1 and the other is in subdivision 7. These are both pretty straightforward projects, no deficiencies, and I would simply ask if there are any questions about these 2 projects.
No questions, Corey. I just missed you on the first time around. That's a damn fine looking tie, and happy St. Patrick's Day to you.
Oh, thank you, Director Begley, and it happens to be a heirloom tie from my father, so I'm proud to wear it, so thank you.
Very nice touch.
Very nice, very nice. Well, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Levine, will you please review the employee wage and/or salary increases and ratifications?
You bet. Good morning. Bonnie Savine, Vice President, Human Resources. I'll begin by giving a couple of bits of information as typical for each month. Recapping employee counts is first. For the end of February of 2020, which was a leap year, so February 29th, there were 819 regular full-time employees and 4 regular part-time for a total of 823 regular employees. To end February of 21, there were 806 regular full-time employees and 4 regular part-time for a total of 810 regular employees. We also had 3 temporary part-time and 1 temporary full-time at the end of this February. And then the second item is a review of jobs that are actively in various stages of the job placement process. We have 6 job requisitions that are going through the approval process right now. We have 3 regular jobs that are posted. 1 is posted internally, 2 are posted externally. We also have the 4 summer job categories that are posted on the district website. And as a reminder, we're accepting applications for those through March 31st. We have 12 jobs that are in the application review stage or interview stage. So we anticipate a number of hires or promotions or transfers from those in the near future. And we do have 2 jobs that have selected candidates, and those are in the hiring stages. Now behind tab 9, you will find the wage and or salary increases and ratifications letter. Human Resources is recommending that the Board of Directors approve wage or salary increases for 35 employees this month. All 35 actually are OAC employees, so wage increases this month. And 25 of the employees are being promoted through the posting process, and 10 of those are being promoted through the natural job progression process. At the bottom, the last section of the letter, there is in the ratification section, 2 SPA new hires that were hired in February, 1 in engineering design and 1 in information technology. So we would ask that those salaries be ratified as well. Do you have any questions?
Bonnie, on March 1st, did the increase for the OAC and SPAs go into effect?
March 1st, yes, thanks, Mr. McGowan. March 1st is the effective date for the SPA general and progression increases. April 3rd is the scheduled date for the OAC general increase, and that is on track and will be effective on Saturday, April 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Thank you, Bonnie. Okay, Mr. Shafford, we will review the reimbursement resolutions associated with the bond issuances you referred to earlier.
Yes, good morning, Joe Shafford, Chief Financial Officer for the district. So behind tab 10, you will find a transmittal memo as well as a reimbursement resolution for a gas department bond issuance as well as a water department bond issuance. You may recall when we do the budget process, we often talk about the color of money, and bond financing is one of those colors. We use bond financing to fund non-recurring larger expenditures A bond allows us to spread the cost of these expenditures over more than one generation of ratepayers, so we feel like it's an equitable way to pay for projects of this nature. We'll probably be fortunate in that the borrowing rates are quite favorable now. The budget assumed a 3% borrowing rate for the bonds. Our hope is that it will be less than that number, but time will tell. The significance of a reimbursement resolution, which is often the first stage of a bond issuance, is that it enables the district to use the proceeds from a future bond issuance to pay ourselves back for costs that would be incurred up to 60 days prior to the approval of the reimbursement resolutions. So that's the significance of bringing this to the March meeting, in that to the extent there are qualifying costs that occurred beginning with 60 days prior to now, which is roughly the beginning of the year, this would enable a subsequent bond issuance to pay for that. So you may recall that when we did the 2021 budget that was approved by the board in December, it included $65.1 million in bond issuances for the water department and another $99.6 million for the gas department. I'll talk very briefly about the components of these amounts. On the water side, again, we anticipate a mid-year bond issuance, but that remains to be seen based on, needs at the time. Corey commented briefly about the outcome of the CIP. It's important to note that this bond issuance will address not only ongoing Florence needs, but also Platte South CIP, the pumping station on West Dodge, a water main in support of that pumping station, and then finally land acquisition for future water reservoirs. All of these items were included in the 5-year view of the budget. But again, we're not going to borrow before we need to. It should be noted that we exited 2020 with $8.9 million in proceeds remaining from the 2018 water bond. And again, just to remind the board, we typically fund 3 years worth of expenditures, 3+ years, with bonds. There's a rule on tax-exempt bond issuances that proceeds must be, about 85% of proceeds must be spent within 3 years of the bond issuance. So that's how we time the issuance. Director McGowan brought up a question about bond carrying costs. So if this bond gets issued at the interest rate we assumed in the budget, which was 3% at $65.1 million, that will result in estimated annual carrying costs of about $4.3 million on top of our current carrying costs of about $21 million. So all in, with all bonds issued, the full year carrying cost on the water side would be $25.3 million. I will put this in a schedule to the board because I realize it's a lot to take in.
So is that $25.3 million? Is that the total debt retirement, or is that just interest, or is it principal and interest? Is it our total debt retirement?
That's total debt carrying costs, which is both principal and interest payments.
Okay.
So flipping to the gas side, the budget assumed $99.6 million in bond financing, and that was to address both the pending rebuild of the LNG facility that Mr. Knight presented to the board in an earlier session, as well as the ongoing accelerated gas infrastructure replacement program. The board will recall we fund that program with a component of rates that we call GIR, or gas infrastructure replacement. It's a fixed component. We fund the difference between the revenue generated from that component and the spend with a bond for the 3-year window. In the budget, we assumed that spread would be about $29 million, and the LNG was about $71 million, which is where the 99.6 came from in the budget. It should be noted that as more information is learned, this is a dynamic process. What the resolution contains is an adjustment downward of that bond. The primary driver of that, as I've worked with Mr. Knight on the LNG project, the cost estimates that were included in the 5-year view of the budget were based on a scoping document, and there were contingency dollars built in on top of that, given the fact that design work had not even begun yet. Design work will begin in the fall time frame, at which point we'll get a much more refined number. So I adjusted the bonding number downward to remove some of that conservatism. The fact is, this is probably a 4+ year project, so it may be possible we'll have another bond issue to finish it. But again, absent detailed design work, I was reluctant to borrow more than I need to, of course. So that's the reason that came down. The reason that we're considering a bond issuance even at this time to address that, and I explained this in the transmittal letter, is that, as you might imagine, a rebuild of an LNG plant requires very specialized equipment that is not exactly sitting on the shelf. It's equipment that has to be manufactured custom. It's high-dollar equipment, and the lead time is in excess of a year. So we may well be placing orders for this equipment in the April timeframe. Again, because of the specialized nature of the equipment, I would fully expect there to be a fairly significant deposit with that order that will be required. But again, we won't borrow before we need to, so I just want to put that out there. That's the reason for the timing. Again, there's an assumption of a June 30 issuance. It will certainly not be precisely June 30, or I'd be surprised if it is. But that's where it's at on that side. Certainly that will add carry. We have very little debt on the gas side, as the board is aware. There's only one bond issuance out there now.
Hey, Joe,
you said a question?
Yeah, you said you won't borrow money unless you need to, until we need to. What's the turnaround? Right. When you decide to borrow, you can't just get the money right away. What's the lead time to plan on getting a bond issued?
It's 60 to 90 days, Director McGowan. Certainly our financial advisor that helps us with bonding has been queued up, as has our bond legal counsel. They're both aware of this. In fact, bond legal counsel drafted the reimbursement resolutions. So they're queued up. It's just a matter of when we pull the trigger to start the process. And again, a lot of that, and certainly on the gas side, Director McGowan, will be driven by ongoing interaction with Mr. Knight as that LNG project continues to develop and when we might be ordering that equipment. That may be the starting point, because again, we can use bond proceeds to pay ourselves back. And again, as you know, it's a great time to borrow. Very low interest rates.
Yes.
Are there any further questions?
Joe, when is the other bond retired that you spoke of, the other gas issuance bond?
They're great question, Director Kavanaugh. They're all 20-year bonds is what we typically issue. That other gas bond was issued in 2018, so it's 2038 is when that'll be done. And again, we factor the carrying costs into all of our cash flows as we budget from a cash needs perspective.
Thank you, and we should be enjoying the best rate we could possibly get with our AA+ bond rating.
Absolutely. Not that coupled with a very favorable borrowing environment. I mean, we're not trying to time the market, so to speak, but it's advantageous to borrow in this market.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Joe. Let's move on. Mr. Mendenhall, will you review the purchase of the property located near the Blair High Road and State Street?
Yes, sir. Good morning. Mark Mendenhall, Senior Vice President, General Counsel. I'll be speaking to the items behind tabs 11, 12, and then I'll be back in front of you to speak about the item behind tab 14. Tab 11 is the recommendation of management to have the board authorize our closing on the purchase of the property near Blair High Road and State Streets. This is the approximately 52 acres of land that we entered into a purchase agreement with the owners in October. I stood in front of you, I believe it was the legislative chambers before we were remote, at the November board meeting to ratify the purchase agreement. And at that time, I indicated to you that I would be back in front of you with a recommendation to close after we go through the determination of whether or not the property is appropriate for our purposes. We have underwent, let's say, about 4 months of due diligence efforts, and I want to briefly recognize the Plan Engineering Department, JEO Engineering, Investors Realty, City of Omaha Planning, and City of Omaha Attorney's offices, who have all been helpful as we have gone through this process. A bit of the flavor, I guess, of the process has included and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to give you an idea. Keep in mind that as I do this, let's see if you can see this image here. This is a conceptual image only and is subject to change, but a bit of the flavor of the work that has gone into has included a boundary line survey, a topographic survey, some environmental studies related to Thomas Creek, which borders the east or the right-hand side of my screen, some traffic studies, and then a lot of work with the City of Omaha planning, because I think that I had indicated to you all back in November that the property was currently zoned DR, or Developmental Reserve, and the big effort will be to work with city planning to change that zoning designation to general industrial. Another part of our effort included a conceptual design. So what you're seeing here is a conceptual design of how the 52 acres could be developed. Keep in mind, this is just a concept only, and it was put on paper in order for us to show Omaha City Planning what we're talking about and what we'd like to ultimately develop. And I believe it is our intention yet this year in 2021 to do a bid for architectural and engineering services. So this design will certainly go through multiple reiterations before a final design is completed. But what you're looking at here is the 52 acres bordered by Blair High Road or, on the west, State Street on the north, and then Potter Street to the south. We have clustered the building, parking, and then outdoor storage along the south. And then we have two access roads, one along Potter Street, which would primarily be the main entrance for the facility. And then we have another long private roadway that runs north to State Street, at which point we will have a gate closer to, and I don't know if you can see my cursor moving on your screen, but there's a bit of a turnabout that we've designed, and there will be a private or a gate there, and so then at that point it'll be a secure facility from that point south. And so again, a lot of effort went into this, and our next steps would be to work with the closing company, hopefully yet in the month of March. I don't see any reason why we couldn't get this closed and finalized in the month of March. And then we will be in front of the Omaha City Council at I believe at the April 8th City Council meeting for the zoning designation change. So exciting opportunity here, and it's all, we've accomplished quite a bit and solved quite a few problems in the last 4 months on this property. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And if need be, I can phone a friend with Stephen, who I know is on the call.
Hey, Mark, this is Tim. Is this purchase contingent upon approval from the planning board of our plan?
No, this purchase is only contingent upon the approval from you all, from our board. The purchase agreement, that was the only contingency in the purchase agreement. What we wanted to build in October when we entered into the purchase agreement was enough lead time or due diligence time in order to go through this city planning zoning designation process. And so we had multiple meetings with city planning, received a letter back from city planning essentially confirming that they are supportive of this zoning change from DR to GI or general industrial. And it also helps, we have to keep in mind that it also helps that the City of Omaha has a future land use map, and within that future land use map, this whole strip of property was identified as to be zoned industrial.
Okay, very good. And have we developed a plan to talk with the neighbors yet, or if there are neighbors in the area that we need to get their support in this project?
There are neighbors on the west side of State Street. There's residential subdivisions there. And then there are neighbors along the east side of Irvington Road, although a majority of those are more industrial. There's a few homes. Behind tab 12, you'll see a recommendation to purchase an additional 4.5 acres that I'll speak to. That's actually owned by one of those neighbors, so we've had extensive conversations with that family, but we have not had, I guess, more broad conversations with neighbors. I don't know, that's a great point, and I'm sure our communications team are taking notes, and I think as we finalize the designs and we have a better idea of what the property will look at, both in terms of buildings, but then also outdoor storage, the noise from our equipment, noise from our machines, that we'll be in a better position to communicate that to those neighbors.
Yeah, communication will be key in this project. Just from past experience of projects like this, it does tend to attract the attention of the neighbors and so forth. So it'd be good to be out front on this and get the buy-in, if possible, from the neighbors, both commercial and residential.
Excellent point. And I would just add, as you're looking at this conceptual design along that east side, that is Thomas Creek. Thomas Creek is a tributary of the Little Papio Creek. I'm not quite sure how deep it is in terms of the bank, but it is bordered by trees, and so there's a natural tree line right there, and the district is not going to be manipulating that tree line in any way. You'll actually see our boundary kind of runs along that tree line, and so that tree line should remain, and so that will be a nice both, I guess, a visual aesthetic block and then a noise dampener for the neighbors along the east side of Irvington Road.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And I can move on to tab 12. Okay, tab 12, I'm going to also share my screen if I can get to the right one here. Bear with me one second. Behind tab 12, you will find a recommendation to purchase an additional approximately 4.8 acres. If you remember the image I just showed you for the conceptual design, there was an irregular shaped piece of property that borders that tree line. It actually is a 9-acre piece of property that goes all the way to Irvington Road. There was significant discussion with the city of Omaha and the owners of that piece of property related to that access road that runs from our concept facility north to State Street, and whether or not that access road would have to be a public roadway, a public right-of-way to provide access to the west end of this 9-acre piece of property. And so after multiple discussions, really positive negotiations with the Hart family, we were able to enter into a purchase agreement subject to the board's approval, where the district would acquire this 4.8 acres, and you'll see it shaded in blue. So the remainder of 52 acres is in that more green shade west of the blue shaded area. The blue shaded area is and I don't believe it's been staked and surveyed yet, but that was the design that we had after discussions with the Hart family. They preferred to own the creek and the tree line. It has sentimental value to the family, and since there were no intentions from the district to manipulate the creek or the tree line, we certainly found that to be a reasonable request. And so behind tab 12, you'll see a recommendation from management to enter into a purchase agreement to acquire this 4.8 acres for $100,000. And then acquiring this 4.8 acres would then be incorporated into the final plat. So then we would own approximately 58 acres in total, which would all be incorporated into the future design of the secondary construction center. This eliminated the need for this public right-of-way, so that secured this drive to be private for the district only, as well as I think it provides a better natural barrier for security purposes. And so it is our recommendation that you authorize the district, the president, to enter into the purchase agreement. We would then work to close on this I don't think that we'll be able to close it concurrent with the 52 acres. I've just seen a title commitment on this just last week. Again, I think survey work is in the mix, and so we would probably close on this property sometime in April if all goes well. And then we would certainly by May, I believe, own all 58 acres, which would then be the basis for the new construction center.
Good. Hey, Mark, this is Jim. Just to put into terms that I know you'll understand as a tennis player, I'm going to give you a lob right now. Just for context and for the record, can you explain what the importance is of this second construction center site for ratepayers and for the district?
Yeah, absolutely. I can do what I can do here, and if I miss anything, I would ask Steve Osmore. I know he is very familiar with this, but the district identified a need for a secondary construction center several years ago, and we had communicated to you all. Believe that there was a video that we gave you as an example. So at 61st and Grover, the district owns approximately 45 acres of property there. There's approximately 150,000 square foot building, which is our construction center. That construction center is essentially a large open warehouse where we store vehicles and equipment. And so these kubota tractors or our large CNG trucks that need to be stored inside during cold weather events, as well as some facilities for the construction folks in terms of a locker room and construction center and a lunchroom, and then some offices. Over the years, that building has become more and more congested, and so it has become more difficult to move equipment in and out of that building, and it has become inefficient. In addition, the analogy of having all of your eggs in one basket has been something that the senior management team, well, all of the management, I would say, has been concerned about. And so in the event of a flood or in the event of a tornado, the district had almost all of its equipment stored at this one site. And this one site, as you know, also houses our operations center as well as a propane air cavern. And so there were very limited options to build or expand at that 45 acres. And so an effort was begun to identify other locations within the district service territory where we may be able to build an additional site. We had looked at property that we owned in terms of either the LNG or Plat West water treatment facilities, as well as other properties that were available on the market within the city of Omaha. It was determined that this site near Blair High Road and State Street was ideal. It has excellent interstate access. There were no restrictions in terms of having an outdoor storage facility. So we could store, as Mr. McGowan was asking about, this ductile iron pipe. That would be something we could store outside at this location, in addition to a dirt pile. If you've seen our construction center at 61st and Grover, we've got an enormous dirt pile that we store there. There are some sites that you cannot store that type of material outside. And so for a variety of reasons, including those, this site was the preferred one, and then the effort was begun to determine whether or not we could change that zoning designation, and we will succeed in doing that, hopefully at the April 8th City Council meeting. Steve, I don't know if you want to chime in if there's anything else I missed, but I would say that those are the real reasons that I can recite right now on why we determined an additional site was necessary.
Does that answer your question, Director Begley?
Absolutely. Thanks for that great summation, Mr. Mendenhall.
Mendenhall, the other thing I'd like to say is, just to throw it out for Jim and all of us, I think we got a tremendous bargain when we bought that land for the price we had to pay for how much land we got, compared to our other alternatives.
Really good point, Mike. And Mark, that was a great summation. And this is a huge deal for the district. It's a huge deal for our ratepayers, for the employees. I know it's been a topic of discussion for many years, so I know there were some circumstances that led us to this point in time, but I'm really, really pleased to see us moving forward with this. Thanks, Mark.
And I would like to add on, Mark Doyle, President. Thanks for the question, Mr. Begley. Several on the board remembers we did a start and stop about 18 years ago or so. And when I sat in front of you on April 6, 2018, one of the things I said I wanted your support on was another construction center in terms of business continuity with all our eggs in one basket, right along a creek that could flood, and we didn't know that there was going to be a massive dewatering effort. So I just want to thank you for your support, your unwavering support of this. This is something where there was no plan or strategy, and we need it. And you're right, it's a big deal, and I look forward to the day when we're appropriately separated with our emergency response and everything we do day in and day out. So thanks to everyone for your work on this, and especially to the board for your support.
Thanks for getting it done, Mark. I remember when that came up before, and the support wasn't there then, it is now, and I think a lot of that is your leadership team, so congratulations on being able to get this plan together.
Thank you, Tim.
Any other questions? Mark Mendenhall, I would ask you at this point, since you're already up talking, why don't you skip down and cover the condemnation under tab 14 so we don't have to flip to Rick and then back to you. Rick, we'll have you come up after this item.
All right. I'm happy to save the best for last. Rick, you can follow me and clean up any mess. So behind tab 14, you will find a recommendation to authorize the resolution to utilize the district's authority to condemn property rights. This is not something that the district has done all that often. I believe that this is the second eminent domain resolution that I have brought to you all, and the first one actually resolved through negotiations with the property owner. This one is a little bit different. And so for this one, this is over approximately 3.5 acres of property the district currently owns. Okay, so this is why this one is a little bit different. So 120th and Military is the liquefied natural gas treatment facility. On that land, there's approximately 3.5 acres that is encumbered by a cell tower lease. That lease was entered into, I believe, in 1991 with the predecessor of Verizon Wireless. So Verizon Wireless owns the steel tower that is there on the more on the northeast side of the LNG property. Since I'm getting good at sharing my screen here, I've actually got a map up that I did want to show you. And hopefully I didn't speak too soon since I'm not getting good at I've got to actually have it up here. So bear with me 1 second, and I think that will help show you where I am at. Okay. So as you're looking at the screen on, you'll see a Google map of the LNG facility. As I'm going to move it in, zoom it in here on the northwest side, that is the Verizon Wireless cell tower. So this cell tower, again, has been constructed and in operations for 20 or so years. And we have a lease that with Verizon Wireless that is managed by an entity called American Tower. We have been working with American Tower to try to terminate the lease or encourage Verizon/American Tower to consider a strategic relocation of that cell. And the reason that we would like that to be moved is, if you recall previous discussions from previous months with the Omaha Public Power District's Power with Purpose initiative. The Power with Purpose initiative is an initiative that OPPD has embarked on to add, I believe, 600 megawatts of solar generation with 600 megawatts of natural gas backup. OPPD has identified 2 locations to site reciprocal combustion engines. These are natural gas-fed engines that will back up the solar generation facilities that they're also building. One of the sites for these reciprocal combustion engines is on the northeast side of the 120th and Military property. The cell tower is in conflict with the future plans to build these engines. And so we have been working for the past, say, 4 months to try to negotiate a termination of the agreement, and we have been unsuccessful. And so we've determined the best step forward would be to condemn the lease interest. And the best step is in terms of both timing. So the condemnation action is one that is fairly quick in terms of litigation. There are specific timelines within the condemnation statute from start to finish. And so this would not, as opposed to if we filed a lawsuit against Verizon Wireless regarding the interpretation of the lease agreement itself, that's something that could take 6 months to a year or even longer. A condemnation action is much more condensed in terms of appointment of the group of appraisers, preparation of the final appraisal report, and then presentation to the county court judges. And so we think that that is the most efficient way in order to acquire that lease interest. During the pendency of the condemnation action, which if you all approve the resolution, it's not something that would be filed tomorrow. There's still some hoops that the district would have to work through in order to file the complaint. But we would be committing to continue negotiations with both Verizon Wireless and American Tower. We have, again, reached out to both and suggested a relocation. We've asked them to consider the property, I don't know, spitballing here, maybe a couple hundred yards to the west, so more on the northwest corner, closer to the intersection of 120th and Military. We would entertain a lease over a portion of property there, again, in order to move that cell tower from the east side to the west side in order to clear it to build the gas facilities to support the gas engines. And so kind of a long explanation, but really that's what's going on here. And again, it is a little bit weird since we already we're the fee owners of the land. So we are just seeking to acquire through condemnation that leasehold interest. So hopefully that answers any questions. But again, I'm happy to explain more if you need further explanation.
Mark, when does the current lease expire, Mark?
So then that's the crux of the dispute. The lease that is in place is set to expire on July 31st of 2021. The district notified American Tower and Verizon Wireless that it seeks to terminate and not renew. As the lease was written, there have been questions raised as to whether or not the district has that authority to terminate and not renew. Otherwise, there is an automatic renewal provision within that lease, which American Tower and Verizon Wireless says that automatic renewal kicks in on August 1st, and then it would go for another. These are built for 4 5-year terms. So under Verizon Wireless and American Tower's interpretation of the lease, this would go for another 20 years from August 1 of 2021 through, July 31st of 2041.
Mark, this is Tim. Does the lease give us, and maybe you're not comfortable talking in open session, but does the lease give us the ability to terminate the lease with proper notice, and is that proper notice being given?
I would say our position is the lease agreement does provide for termination rights for the district, and we have complied with the notice provisions within the lease. Verizon Wireless and American Tower have taken a different position, and that question could, if litigated, could result in months, if not close to a year of litigation, as opposed to this method of using condemnation.
So are we condemning their tower as well? In other words, we own the land. Are we condemning their structure as well?
So, no, we're just condemning the leasehold interest. If successful, and if the court were to give that leasehold interest back to us, what we could do then is file a trespass case against them, secure a judgment there, and then, I mean, being a bit facetious here, but essentially remove it on our own. I am optimistic that it would not come to that point, and that we would be working with Verizon and American Tower to relocate it. There's valuable equipment there that I know that they do not want just simply removed. And these people have been, we've been having good negotiations with them. It's just the negotiations haven't resulted in the outcome that we desire. So that would be the next step if it all fell apart, I guess, if the discussions fell apart, then we would file a trespass action and then essentially forcibly remove, similar to a landlord removing the tenant's furnishings from an apartment complex.
In the alternatives we've provided to them for other locations, what is their reason for that not being acceptable? Are there some elevation issues? What's their reason?
They have not shared their reasons. They've simply stated that after an assessment regarding the strategic relocation of that tower, that they feel that they are not willing to engage in a discussion to relocate it, that they'd prefer to stay where they are. So they haven't shared the reasons. I agree there are some elevation change there. If you're familiar with the area where the cell tower sits is higher up on the street as opposed to as you progress to the west. Those would be factors regarding the rental rate, though, in my opinion, and shouldn't be an obstacle to actually moving the tower. But that is one consideration I'm sure that they have taken into account. But they have not shared the reasons why they're not interested in moving. I just think that they feel strongly that their position on the lease it would be successful, and that they don't need to consider moving.
And Director Friend just asked me too, what would the cost be to relocate? Who would pay for that? And has that discussion been entered into?
Yeah, so we had. We've been given some ballparks, but again, they went through an assessment to determine the costs to move and whether or not moving would, I think, impact their services. They did not share that assessment with either Mr. Cooper or myself after we had requested. I had also requested of their attorney to at least give me the numbers so that we can have a discussion about the costs to relocate. They have not shared that with me either. One of the, I guess, anecdotal comments that their counsel gave to me probably back in December was that moving a tower such as this could go from anywhere, could be anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000 to move that tower. And so that's a huge range. And so that's the best numbers that I have to go on at this point, but they have not given me any definitive cost to relocate.
I wanted to ask if I don't know how lengthy that lease is, but I would sure like to see a copy of it if you could email it, if that's feasible.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Mark, it's Jim. Just one last follow-up. If the board authorizes the use of eminent domain, which would be a last resort, would Verizon and American have the ability to appeal our utilization of eminent domain, and would this drag out in the courts?
Great question, and that's why you will find a fairly detailed resolution. And so the resolution needs to demonstrate the authority that the state legislature has given this body in our Enabling Act. And so the resolution was written to make it very clear that this is for a public purpose related to the construction of gas facilities to service another gas facility, which is the OPPD RICE engines, those reciprocal combustion engines. And so the condemnation action, the condemnee, which would be the leasehold interest, they would not be able to appeal whether or not eminent domain was, I guess, met the purpose as long as the resolution is written as it was. They could appeal the valuation. So through the condemnation action, the county court would appoint 3 independent appraisers. They would be tasked with determining the value of the lease interest. That's a tricky valuation process, and it's not so easy as just saying, okay, this is a piece of property, here's what it's worth. Well, what is it worth as a lease? And so we've already had some discussions within our law department with an outside expert that has worked with cell tower leases before, and so we're going to have a pretty good idea of what that valuation is, and so we'll be submitting evidence to the appraisers for them to consider. So that would be the Verizon Wireless's only opportunity to appeal would be on the valuation. And so we would have the property rights, which is what we would want. So their appeal wouldn't hold up our ability to, I guess, clear out the property to make room for the facilities that need to go there.
And real quick follow-up, do we know what OPPD's timeline is to have this installed? What their desired timeline is?
Yes, and we have had consistent, regular communications with them. We've actually identified this as the most likely next step that we're going to take. They appreciate that open communication. My understanding is that both sites, the 120th and Military, and then their other site, that they would like those engines to be operational by 2023.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark?
I think it's the spring of 2023.
Mark, does Verizon have condemnation authority themselves?
That's a good question. I don't believe that they do. We've actually bounced that idea around several times, just in previous unrelated discussions, whether or not an entity that has condemnation authority could pursue condemnation against another entity with condemnation authority. And so I don't believe that there could be a back and forth if we were to condemn the lease interest and then they were to come back and condemn, try to condemn and take part of our property. I don't see that as an option that they would hold in this circumstance.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, unless there's any further questions, thank you, Mr. McGowan, and that's all.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Kubot, will you review the second legislative report for 2021?
Yes. Good morning, Rick Kubot, Government Affairs Attorney. I believe the report is on tab 13. I would like to make note there's 2 bills, LB 266 by Senator McCollister, where management's recommending we change our position from neutral to opposed, and LB 619 from Senator Sanders from opposed to neutral, and I'll touch upon those briefly later on in the report. The opening paragraph, really quick, describes 2 upcoming hearings that are informational gathering hearings. One is in front of the Natural Resources Committee by Senator Bosselman, where he's going to explore reasons for the interruptions in electricity. That's essentially going to be a public power hearing. That hearing is this afternoon. Additionally, Senator Wayne on the 9th of this month is going to be holding a hearing in front of Urban Affairs where he's going to be requesting information in terms of the natural gas supply. M.U.D. will be one of the participants of that hearing, along with the Public Service Commission, Black Hills, and potentially others. So moving on to the board report, I'm going to skip ahead and go to page 2 with LB 178. That's Senator Lindstrom's water and sewer turnback bill. That bill did advance from committee. It's out on the floor. It does not have a prioritization date. the committee did amend the bill that they amended the bill, changing the amount of turnback where it starts at 36% of sales tax on both wastewater and potable water services. And then year 2, it turns into a 50% turnback every year thereafter. On the committee report itself is a listing of several entities that joined us in supporting that bill. It's lengthy enough that I'm not going to go over all of them, but definitely thankful for all the different cities and organizations that chimed in support. There is no opposition to that bill. The main hurdle there is the fiscal note for the state of Nebraska is relatively significant. After that, we have on the same page at the bottom, LB 266 by Senator McCollister. That was the bill that I informed the board that it was our understanding that an amendment was going to be offered on that bill where the language was going to encourage public power to achieve net zero carbon by 2050. Instead, the original form of the bill was offered for committee consideration, and that original bill contained language that public power shall achieve net zero carbon by 2050. When we found out about that in consultation with Mr. Mendenhall and Mr. Doyle, the district testified and informed the committee of our concerns related to that bill, and we took a position to oppose. So that's one of 2 bills where we're asking for your permission to officially change our position. Moving on, I'm going to go to page 4, LB 414 by Senator Wishart, which allows political subdivisions to engage in design build. We were attempting to be added on to that bill as an eligible entity to be able to use design build. Unfortunately, we were not added. Senator Wishart wants this bill to be subject to the consent calendar for purposes of getting it passed. Adding M.U.D. would slow that process down for her. In all likelihood, M.U.D. may be bringing a standalone bill in a subsequent session so that we're granted that specific authority. So long story short, we are not on that bill at this point in time. The last bill that I want to briefly touch upon is on the last page, and that's LB 619 by Senator Sanders. This was a one-call bill that spoke to the issues of depth. It would have changed some of the depth requirements for natural gas facilities. In addition to that, it would exempt residential grading of single-family homes from being subject to the One Call Act. Both items of district concern were removed from that bill, or it's my understanding they're going to be removed from that bill, being an amendment. What I'm requesting here, what management's requesting is, with the presumption that the amendment's going to be adopted, we would like to change our position from opposed to neutral. So that's kind of the quick and dirty of everything. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Rick, I want to tell you that I really appreciate your hard work, and especially on LB 178. I know those people didn't join up just out of their goodwill. I know you worked hard to convince them that this was the right direction to go in, and thank you.
Thanks for those comments.
And I'm glad the World Herald ran a correction where they said that we were responsible for sewers, but they did run a correction to straighten that out and notified everybody in their little portion of the correction that the city of Omaha is responsible for sewage.
Rick, have we seen Senator Sanders' amendment? I want to believe that the amendment exists, but remember that time we thought that other amendment existed?
Yes, that's why I'm choosing my words carefully as it relates to that bill. It's with the presumption that amendment will be adopted. That's why we would change our position. We have seen the amendment. Her legislative aide has sent a letter, and we have responded with assuming that amendment language gets adopted, then the district no longer has issues with the bill.
Thank you.
Good point, though. We've been fooled once this session. Hopefully it won't happen again.
Hey, Rick, I have just a real quick question. On the opening paragraph, you mentioned that hearing Senator Wayne is going to chair on natural gas supplies, and you said we're going to participate. Will that be you, or who's going to participate on behalf of M.U.D. on that?
Right now, our plan is to have Mr. Mendenhall participate, and potentially Mr. Knight. Jim Knight will be present with us. It's invited testimony only, and at this point in time, our main presenter would be Mark Mendenhall.
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity, and I think we ought to be prepared to, to take credit for all that we've done from a natural supply standpoint, providing our customers cheap natural gas supplies compared to other choices, and the performance, like in the past vortex when it was so doggone cold, we were able to meet all the water and gas needs of our customers. I think we ought to take the opportunity to toot our horn.
We've had discussions around that very issue, Director McGowan, and we're somewhat looking forward to the opportunity to present our information to that committee.
Yep, because that's where we get payoff for all our good hard work and planning and contingency planning and continuity planning. So I hope we do take advantage of it.
I have a suggestion in terms of preparing for that. I know that the Senator Wayne has made comments in the press about water, and just because it says that the hearing is about gas, I think we should be prepared to respond to some of the things that at least we're aware of. So just wanted to say that out loud to be.
Good point, Tanya. Good point. Thank you.
Because it's a forum. Could be great theater. I don't want us to be on the back foot in that context. Thank you.
Any other questions for Rick? Thank you, Mr. Kubot. Good report. Appreciate it. Okay, now in the Committee of the Whole, Masa Nia, the Director of our Infrastructure Integrity, will now present the update to the Infrastructure Replacement Program. So, Masa, could you do that for us?
Yes. Good morning, Director McGowan. Thank you. I'm going to share my first slide here. Just want to make sure everybody can see it. Director McGowan, can you see that opening slide?
Yes,
great.
Got it.
Thank you. Masania, I'm the Infrastructure Integrity Director and currently serving as the Interim Vice President of Water Operations. This morning, Jared Spagera and I will be providing the annual update on both the district's gas and water infrastructure replacement program. First, we'll start with the update on the gas distribution system. As you're aware, the cast iron gas mains are targeted for replacement because of the higher risk of failure resulting from breaks. The past break history indicated the need to start replacing the cast iron gas mains as break rates over time were increasing exponentially, as shown on this chart. The district's infrastructure replacement program began in 2008 to improve the overall reliability and safety of the gas system. This phase of the program has targeted the cast iron gas mains and has been replacing mains at a pace of 40 miles per year over the last several years. This work resulted in a reduction of breaks and improvement of the overall risk of the system. This large overview map of Omaha shows the cast iron gas mains that have been abandoned over the last decade in gray. In addition, the red area represents the mains planned for replacement this year, along with cast iron gas mains in yellow that will be replaced by 2027 as part of the accelerated IR program. The gas infrastructure replacement program won't stop with the completion of cast iron gas mains, as the regulations under the Distribution Integrity Management Program requires utilities to seek continual risk reduction, which may include inside meter sets, older buried regulator stations, or bare steel gas mains, just to name a few. I want to thank the board for their commitment to invest in our gas infrastructure and to provide for more of a safe and reliable gas system.
Now, Masa, on that slide there, it shows that we have 193 miles remaining. With our goal of 40 miles per year, that indicates in 5 years we'll have met our cast iron replacement. Is that right?
That's the current pace, Director McGowan. Towards the end of the program, it will become a little bit more complicated or complex with the larger mains. And we'll have to be very careful with the planning and scheduling of that as we transition the customers from the low pressure system to the high pressure system. So we anticipate that the pace will slow in the latter part of the program.
Okay, and then I just want to follow up on your point, just make sure I understand it. At that point, then we're going to start looking maybe not at cast iron, but we're going to look at other areas of our system that need to be updated and maintained on an annual basis and develop a program to address that maintenance as well.
That's right. The regulations will require the review of the next item, and we've got a distribution integrity management planning committee that meets on an annual basis to review the different risks. So we'll be looking at what other items are out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Now transitioning to the water distribution side, this map displays the 538 main breaks that occurred in 2020, and as you can see, it's occurring throughout our system. These breaks cost a total of $6.4 million to repair. What's not captured here are the social impacts that are that include traffic disruptions, service interruptions, and business disruptions as well. There are a couple breaks I'd like to highlight that occurred last year. Pictured on the right is one of the 20 leak monitors the district purchased last year as a pilot program. These remote devices use highly sensitive acoustic recording technology when in contact with the water system, and it provides an alert for potential water leaks. Last year, we had 3 leaks that were repaired following alerts, including this one pictured on the left side at 76th and Wright Street, which is just south of Center. The exciting part of this is that the leaks were discovered without any water surfacing, and repairs were scheduled prior to a break, which saved the cost of paving and property damage. Equally, if not more important, was the opportunity to inform customers of a water outage to make repairs versus an emergency break that could happen at any time of day. We're looking forward to expanding the use of this technology in the future. The next break I'd like to highlight is one that occurred at 24th and Benton. This was challenging for several reasons. It was on a 16-inch main that was located right near a fitting and was in the middle of the intersection and surrounded by buried utilities, including a large vault. All of this slowed the repair work. Also, it occurred on May 31st during the height of civil unrest. So we took a position of caution and stopped overnight work. All of this together prolonged the average break repair from several hours to several days. I'd like to recognize the work of the employees involved in making the repairs, and the customer success team and staff from our water distribution division who assisted with delivering water to our customers, including the use of the water wagon pictured here. Their hard work reduced the impacts of the outage. And I wish I had a picture of Megan Murray, Julie Thacker, and others that were assisting with it, and the smiles on the faces from the customers when they were receiving the water during this outage. Historical breaks have been documented back to the 1950s, and that data is used to forecast breaks into the future as shown here. Breaks, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong side. Let me scoot back one. Breaks have been increasing in the past and will continue into the future. And as you can see, that is not sustainable unless we replace more high-risk mains. I'd like to point out that we're not unique in the state of our infrastructure. The American Society of Civil Engineers puts out a report card in different sectors of infrastructure every 4 years, and they just published it this month in March for the 2021 report. And drinking water received a grade letter of C-. So one of the stats that they had shared was that utilities across the country, there's a break occurring every 2 minutes across the U.S. So this forecast adjusted to show the reduction in breaks by replacing 25 miles of main by 2025. The increase to replacing 25 miles of main per year, which is approximately 0.8% of our water mains, translates to an expected water main life of 125 years. This provides a more sustainable plan for the future and flattens that curve. So here's a look at our accomplishment from previous years, which we're proud to have met our stretch goal of 12.75 miles in 2020. Employees across the district contributed to successfully meeting our goal for a second straight year. So really an incredible job given all the additional challenges in 2020. By the year 2025, we expect work to cost $52 million per year. We're continually monitoring the most efficient, cost-effective, and least disruptive methods of renewal and replacement. Reducing the cost per mile is critical to the long-term success of the district's infrastructure replacement program. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Jared Spagera to provide some highlights from 2020 and upcoming work in 2021.
Hey, Masa, one quick question on that graph there. In 2021, this year, we have a plan of 16 miles to replace?
Yes.
Am I correct, if I recall right, is that 8 miles done by internal crews and 8 miles done by external crews?
We're going to have more work done by external crews, and Jared will cover some of this. But we are looking to increase the workforce internally as well.
But do you know what the split of that 16 miles is for internal versus external plan?
Yeah. Yes. Believe, and Jared, correct me if I'm wrong on this. We had about 5 miles in 2020, and we're looking to add an I-gang in 2021. So we're looking at 7 to 8 miles next year, or I guess that would be this year.
Yeah, for 2021, it's 7.7 miles by M.U.D crews and 8.25 by contract partners, so almost an even split.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I will hand this off to Jared, and
Thanks, Masa. Yeah, as Masa had mentioned, I'm Jared Spagera. I'm the infrastructure engineer and currently serving as the interim director of infrastructure integrity. So in 2020, we exceeded our mileage goal by completing 13.4 miles of water infrastructure replacement. Of that 13.4 miles, M.U.D crews completed 4.6 miles, and our contract partners completed the remaining 8.8 miles. These projects affected 972 water services, and through that work, we didn't leave any lead services behind. 129 lead services were replaced in full if they were affected by a water infrastructure replacement project. We tackled several new initiatives in 2020, one being our pilot pipe bursting project shown in Northeast Omaha. Pipe bursting involves fracturing the old cast iron main in place while pulling a new water main into the same location. This replacement method presents an opportunity to replace mains more cost effectively wherever it can be utilized. In addition to pipe bursting, we also introduced PVC as a material used in directional drilling of new water mains. And besides direct replacement, we completed a condition assessment project in South Omaha and a cathodic protection retrofit project along Crown Point Avenue, which I'll discuss later in the presentation. So as you mentioned, Director McGowan, in 2021, our goal is to replace 15 miles of water main with a stretch goal of 16 miles. M.U.D crews will account for 7.7 miles of replacement, made possible by the additional water infrastructure construction crew that Masa mentioned. And we'll also pilot a pipe bursting contract partner in 2021 to complete infrastructure replacement in the Westgate neighborhood. In addition to replacement, we'll be piloting a condition assessment along I Street to limit the amount of replacement required along that corridor ahead of an upcoming road improvement. And the photo on the right shows a crew member operating the pipe bursting equipment in 2020. And they'll have the opportunity to operate this equipment again in 2 locations coming up in 2021. Water infrastructure replacement is unique in that it's much more disruptive and expensive than replacement on the gas side. So the more we can safely leave infrastructure in the ground, the better. Besides direct replacement of water mains, we can use different tools to examine the condition or health of our infrastructure. We select these condition assessment tools based on the ways that different pipe materials fail. A good example is the proposed assessment I mentioned along I Street. This assessment will involve doing sort of an MRI scan of the inside of the pipe and finding areas with localized corrosion, which we can then strategically repair without having to replace the entire pipeline. Another way we aim to extend the service life of our water mains is through pressure monitoring and pressure management. In 2021, we're piloting a smart hydrant, which will relay real-time pressure data to the cloud in order to locate areas where pressure spikes may be wearing on our system. So these photos were taken along Crown Point Avenue, where the road was being replaced as a part of a city project. And we took the opportunity to install corrosion protection on the older ductile iron water main below the street. Before we started specifying polywrap in the late 80s, ductile iron went into the ground without any corrosion protection. So through this method, we attached sacrificial anodes along the main to act as that corrosion protection. And this ductile iron main had not experienced any failures yet, and this low-cost measure is expected to extend the main's high-quality service life by an additional 20 to 40 years. Lastly, I'd like to show how we'll be utilizing new tools going forward to prioritize replacing our critical miles. We worked with a consultant to develop a comprehensive GIS-based risk model to identify the highest risk water mains across the entire distribution system. This will make project selection much more efficient as opposed to our manual desktop approach that was used in prior years. And it will also make it easier to plan further out and ensure work for contract partners, as well as balancing our different replacement methods. The image at the right shows, zooms into an area in South Omaha and shows how we're using risk to prioritize year after year. So with that, I'd like to thank the board for your commitment and support toward our water infrastructure replacement program and open the floor to any questions.
I have 2 questions for you, if I could. When we experience a water main break, is the district liable to any business continuity or business loss of that business during the duration of that water main break?
In some instances, I believe that might be a question for Mr. Mendenhall. If he...
Yeah, so Mr. McGowan, great question. We have taken the position that we're not liable for like loss of business opportunities, and so if a water main break were to flood out a business, we're certainly going to work with that business to put that business in the place that it was in prior to the break, and so that might mean replacing some carpet or some drywall. If there's damaged tables or other equipment, we will certainly replace or fund the replacement value of that. But if that business was not able to do whatever it is for a number of days, we don't pay for loss of opportunity or lost profits.
So if a restaurant loses its water service because of a water main break for 2 days and they've lost revenues for dinners, lunches, and everything, or even loss of food, we don't compensate anything?
Maybe for a loss of food, if the food was damaged because of some problem with the cooling system, something like that, then I would consider compensating for that. But lost profits, no, we would not. And I would also note that it is very rare that we have service that is out for an extended period of time, and that's all in thanks to our crews. I think that they are, as you know, responsive 24/7 and do an excellent job to put that service or put that pipe back into service as quickly as possible. So generally, it's a matter of hours as opposed to days.
Okay, thank you. I'm just kind of curious. And then my second question, Masa, it's either for you or for Bonnie Savine, or maybe just a general question. We have a new construction water infrastructure replacement crew coming online in 2021 that we budgeted for. Have we hired? Is that crew in place and ready to do work right now?
I'll give it my general answer and have Bonnie refine it if needed. It is not, our crew's not in place yet, but we are having plans to get that crew hired in place and working hopefully later this spring or summer, dedicated to the replacement of the water mains we're targeting.
Thanks, Masa. Bonnie Savine, Vice President, Human Resources. And thanks for the question, Director McGowan. We actually have 15 pipe layer trainees that we are looking to bring on board over the next several weeks. The construction division's supervisory team is in the process of making those selections. So I expect that we will have a couple of groups. We'll spread them out for training purposes, and out of some of those, and then there will be some additional pipe layer trainees hired later on in a subsequent round of hires. But out of those new hires, we will be able to backfill some of the construction positions in all the way through the construction family, and then they will be able to take and create a dedicated infrastructure crew, because as we know, it is not just those pipe layer trainees that we will utilize for that crew. We will need a variety of positions within the construction division to create that full crew. So they will be waiting until they get some of those new hires on and get them trained, and then they'll be able to fill that entire crew.
Do we post the jobs for pipeline trainees? Is that a new job, a free job that's posted? And we look at for new hires for that?
Yes, we follow the posting guidelines that are not only our policy, but also in our bargaining agreement. So they are posted internally as needed through the bargaining agreement, and then those positions are posted externally for additional hires, again, according to the posting guidelines. Typically, that position is filled externally, but we do occasionally have some internal employees that are interested in those positions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Jim. Masa and Jared, thanks for the presentation. Really quick, Masa, as we ramp up for 25 miles by 2025 for water main replacement, how does that put the district in terms of KPI or key performance indicators for the water industry? Does that put us on par with the industry?
Bagley, thank you for that question. That's a very good question and something we're watching and have analyzed with where we're at on a break rate basis, and the KPI that's often used is a breaks per 100 miles just to normalize it. And where we're at right now is we're not meeting the AWWA standards with where we're at. Once we get up to the 25 miles, we'll see ourselves level off, and with other regional water utilities that we've been compared to, we'll be in line with that expectation and in a better position. We're not going to be at the top, but we're going to gain ground on from where we're at.
Thank you.
This is Gwen.
Mr. Begley. Oh, go ahead, Gwen.
Oh, well, I was just going to ask Masa if he's aware of the water main break at 57th and Jackson that occurred last week. I know it's hard to keep up with everything that's happening, especially when the weather's so terrible and we've got a few more breaks. But I try to keep Mark Doyle informed of it because it's a block from where I live. And in a nutshell, one of the neighbors got up in the middle of the night and realized that she didn't have any water pressure and looked out the window and saw the water running down the street. And the next time she looked out the window, the workers were there. And she said they were so industrious. They got the street torn up. They were in the hole. They were working on it. And since people aren't really going out to movies right now or other entertainment, it became kind of a neighborhood event. And I wanted to let you know that the folks over there were so impressed and so grateful that things moved along quickly. That was, I believe it was either last Wednesday or last Thursday night this happened, when it was so cold and so snowy. And they've completed it. It's already been concreted over. They've still got the barriers up there because they've got to let the concrete age. But the neighborhood was very impressed with M.U.D. I tried to keep Mike Doyle informed kind of step by step with pictures. But thank you for the hard work, and thank you for people appreciating M.U.D.
Director Howard, thanks for sharing that. And yes, our crews, our first responders are great and very responsive to that, and especially this time of year when it's terribly cold outside, and the environment around the water main with the frozen ground and the snow makes it a challenge. Our crews do a great job with it, and it becomes difficult because we do see more breaks during the wintertime when the weather's as cold as it is, and it's just the stresses around it, and the crews work well to get the water main restored, service back in place, and we are measuring that KPI, and we do very well in that area.
And those are our internal workers. That's not contracted out. This is all our employees that are doing this. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, they deserve a lot of credit for. I can't imagine getting out of your warm bed to look forward to getting into a wet hole to deal with this. So they really have my appreciative thanks.
Director Howard, you have been keeping me posted, and I've passed along the pictures and your comments to the management team, and I know Corey is passing those on as well. I want to make a few comments here. Thank you, Masa and Jared, for your presentation. And someone asked about the costs to business. Regardless of who pays for it, we haven't properly captured the social costs of water main breaks, and we're doing a better job of that. But that's a part that cannot be ignored, regardless of whether it's the cost of the district or the cost of a restaurant to be out of business, or a packing plant, or a residence, or a school, and on and on and on. And we've had We've had them all. We're doing okay in terms of our back office management engineering side of this massive, critically important initiative, which is a threat to the sustainability of M.U.D. If we don't turn this around, which we're working hard on, it will be a problem that will get away from us. Case in point, we don't know why, but in the month of February, we had 75 water main break events compared to 43 last year, and the 5-year average of 43. So we're not sure why February was so bad, and we can blame it on a couple days of the polar vortex, but there's always many, many reasons, and we're going to do our best to figure them out. And I will say, even though we had a cold snap, there was enough snow on the ground where the frost depth wasn't as deep as people thought it was. So we have a long ways to go, and for MASA to mention a C- in the industry, that's generous. And I'm not talking about our response to water main breaks. We are extremely good at responding to water main breaks because we have so many. We want to have less. And we want to convert some of our emergency work, which is internally done all the time, because we're the only ones that we could trust to do it, and we do it best in all conditions. We need to convert that work to replacement and rehabilitation. As Masa said, keeping the infrastructure in ground and rehabilitating it is the best thing to do if we can do it, and extending the life with cathodic protection, which means getting rid of corrosion. But let me tell you one story that I didn't find out until we started pushing this initiative at the level that we have. We have a cohort, and cohort is a fancy word for saying a type of water main that's ductile iron that was installed from 1990 to 2002 out in the western part, Millard area, not Millard, but in places where you wouldn't expect water main breaks. It wasn't properly installed, it wasn't properly wrapped, and those ductile iron mains are failing at the rate of old corroded cast iron mains. Those mains haven't even been in the ground as long as I've been at M.U.D. We didn't know that, now we know it, now we have to manage it, but we can't create problems like that in the future. We've done a stellar job on the gas side for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons it's regulated, Masa mentioned a DIMP, or a distribution integrity management plan. We're regulated to take care of gas, and that pushed us along, and we're doing a great job. We're not regulated to take care of water main breaks, but we're regulated to provide safe, high-quality water. We need your support. We know it was difficult to do what we did a year ago, January, with raising our rates the way we did. But if we don't get after this and turn it around, it's something that will get away from us. We don't know. We had a month of February that doubled last year, and we don't know why for sure. I'm hoping that we're going to make ground on everything, and we're going to talk differently in the future. It isn't miles of mains going forward. It's going to be reducing breaks per mile. 1 mile of main could be bigger than 50 miles of main somewhere else. So we're going to keep at it. I'm not as optimistic as I was because of what happened last month, but I know we're focused on it. And going forward, it's going to take a different type of management and leadership to stick with this. Right now, we have an infrastructure integrity group, which is small, and if they find a problem with pressure transients or pressure spikes outside of a pump station because a pump's going bad, they don't necessarily have the leeway or the authority to go take care of that. So I'm going to work at some organizational issues too, and try to knock down barriers, which other people call silos. We're going to get after this, but we need your support. This, the secondary construction center, and a lot of other things are paramount that we stick with it. And we will do more work with M.U.D. crews. We have to. We can't do this alone, and contractors can't do it alone. We're going to have to grow both sides of this to get to 25 miles and fixing and replacing the proper mains. Thanks for your attention on this. I can't stress more how important this is.
Mark, a quick question. Is it more cost effective to get ahead of it and anticipate an area as best you can than it is to deal with the actual break when it occurs in the middle of the night?
Absolutely. Yes. And I would say recently, we had a water main break yesterday. And this is where we've really made some strides. We had, well, not a water main break. We had a customer send a note to Mr. Begley, which I hope we followed up on for you, Director Begley, that said, there's been a lot of water main breaks in our neighborhood. Can you send me information? I'm worried about my water service. Should I buy the home serve product? Put that aside. When I asked off to the side of that neighborhood, Jared quickly sent me a map, a GIS map of the hot spots, how many breaks are in that neighborhood, and when it's scheduled to be replaced and where the priority was. If we had that in the past, I haven't seen it. So the tools that you are providing are giving us the opportunity to look in almost real time at an area and decide if we're prioritizing right. And again, it's the risk of failure of a main and the consequence of failure. And that means if two mains or two sections of main are equal in terms of our assessment of corrosion or anything else, if one's in front of a hospital or a school, it goes a little higher than a neighborhood. You know, we're doing things like that, but we've got so much to do, it's daunting. It's a lot of mains, and it's not just cast iron, so we're going to also change the way we talk about this. Thank you for the question. I hope I answered it. I know I'm on a little bit of a roll here.
Yes. I have a question going, sorry, Director Howard.
Go ahead, Tanya.
I have a question about, are there policies and staffing in place now to inspect the installation to ensure that the new mains are installed properly and that we aren't in the same position of having very young mains that we're replacing because they were installed improperly?
Great question, Director Cook. We talk about this all the time. There always have been, but we haven't always made sure they're being inspected. I would say our internal work is self-inspected, and this is now Mark's opinions, not scientific engineering fact. I think we self-inspect and we do a very good job. Watching our contractors, we're supposed to be doing that, and I need to be assured that we are. What happened between 1990 and 2002 to me is unacceptable, but that's the past. So Stefan and Corey and Jeff Skovanik and Masa and everybody involved with installation of new mains knows that we are accountable for inspecting and making sure they are done properly and working with our contractors to say it's unacceptable for you to gouge a main and cover it up or throw concrete chunks in there and dent it. But another thing that's helped, or some of the things, is we've moved to a bio wrap. So we wrap black mains with white wrap. When you have black wrap over black mains, you don't see if it's nicked or gouged. And we're buying ductile iron mains, which you will approve, I hope, in a little while here, that are zinc coated. That's a corrosion protection that we're going to pay more for, that will pay dividends 30 and 40 and 50 years down the line if they're installed properly and if they're taken care of when we have to uncover them and put valves in or fix mains and make sure that that's done properly. But you hit on a topic that is as critically important as anything else, and that's making sure we're doing it right going forward.
Hey, Mark, it's Jim.
Thank you for that question.
Julie Thacker did a great job of following up with that customer, so I do want to give kudos to Julie for doing a great job, as always.
And I would say another thing, we've advanced our communications and our one-on-one contact with every customer that contacts us. And Stephanie, Julie, Tracy, Jessica, the whole group, I can't tell you how pleased a customer is just to get a response and then to go above and beyond and talk to them about their issue, because we're government. Their expectations are so low to begin with. I apologize, but they are. We are delighting the customer even when they have problems that maybe weren't their own fault. So thanks for saying that, Jim. I feel like they're all being handled, but if that's not always the case, please let me know.
Hey, Mark, I wanted to ask if Jim Knight, at the next board meeting, I don't want to put him on the spot today, could do a very short presentation on the natural gas consortium that we are a member of, the benefits, and this is for the benefit of some of the newer members of the board, the benefits of being in the consortium and what restraints we have, if any, compared to the Southwest Power Pool, which attracted a lot of criticism for OPPD, and some of the restraints that they're under, which we may or may not be under, but it would be a good educational piece next month.
We will do that. Jim is going to give a quick update and mainly have a little Q&A with you at the end of the regular board meeting. As far as the consortium, are you talking about the Central Plains Energy Project, or CPEP?
CPEP, yep.
Okay, that's a funding mechanism, and we'd love to give you a presentation on that. But we're not in anything real similar to the Southwest Power Pool, which groups a whole bunch of states up and kind of consolidates their energy acquisition and supply. We'd love to do that.
Okay, thank you.
We will do that.
Thank you.
And Mark, to follow up on that, we're not, like you said, we're not in any consortium like OPPD is. We make our own decisions on natural gas deliveries, LNG, propane, and all that, storage and purchases. We are not bound by any consortium on our natural gas planning.
Correct, but it would be a good opportunity to talk about CPEP because it is a bit of a public consortium of funding. But I'd also say, Mike, that Jim will talk a little later, but the ability to store energy like we do, we call it peak shaving, but it's become really apparent that having 40% of our send out be energy we've stored in the form of liquefied natural gas and propane air is really everything looks different every time we go through something like that. That's something. No one can do anything to stop us from sending out energy that we store. Now, the other 60%, of course, comes from the pipeline, and we have some dependencies there, but that's our firm supply. Thank you.
Right, and CPEP is a funding mechanism and saves our ratepayers a ton of money, and I think that's a great idea, Tim, to have a summary of it. Mark, one thing I wanted to ask you, or somebody, I guess, as you recall, we postponed our water rate increase on January 1st to go into effect May the 3rd. Are we on target to implement that, and do we have a communication plan to go out and remind people that your water rates are going to increase? You know, we delayed it because of COVID and potential hardships, but we have a rate increase scheduled, or we're already approved by this board to go into effect May the 3rd.
I'll cut that short by saying we will be ready to implement that, and we will get back with you on the communication plan offline, but we're ready for that as well.
Okay, and we can take some kudos for that too, because we postponed it because of the COVID and everything, but now, you know, like you said earlier, we have to have the water increases to maintain our water infrastructure replacement program for the long-term benefit of the customers.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Masa? Great discussion. Thank you, Masa. For the great report, and we'll go from there. Do any of the board members have any further comments at this time? Well, of course I do. I have to ask this question of Joe Shafford. Joe, what's the timing of the 2020 pension report from Pat Beckham?
Good morning, Joe Shafford, Chief Financial Officer. Last year, Mike, we received the valuation report, or the actuarial report, I should say, that gives the funding percentage you're interested in late March. I believe we're on track for a similar timing. As we've discussed with the market performance, I expect it to edge up slightly because the actuarial approach smooths that market performance, but I would expect late March.
So will Pat be on the agenda for April meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other board members have any other comments, questions? Okay, due to COVID-related precautions, members of the public have access to this meeting via WebEx connection that is set up in a nearby conference room at the headquarters building. Are there any members of the public present who would like to address the board? And if so, please indicate your intentions to the moderator in the room.
Good morning, Director McGowan. This is Sophia Winfrey. At this time, there is no public representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Well, if there is none, the committee meetings have now concluded. It is 10:24. We will reconvene at 11:24 promptly. Thank you. I'd like now to call the meeting, our regular meeting to order. Welcome to the Metropolitan Utilities District, a regular monthly board meeting this morning, March 3rd, 2021. This meeting is being live streamed from the boardroom at the M.U.D headquarters building located at 7350 World Communications Drive. And the recording will be uploaded and available for viewing on the M.U.D website following today's meeting. I'd like to announce that due to the governor's extended executive order suspending in-person meeting requirements under the Nebraska Open Meetings Act, board members are permitted to participate remotely if they so choose. This extension of this order will remain in effect until April 30th, 2021. And I will note that Director Howard, Director Cook, and myself are participating remotely, and the other 4 directors are at the World Headquarters building. I would like to recommend those attending in person at the board meeting today that we must abide by the City Council ordinance requiring that all those attending in person today put on a face mask or face covering or maintain 6-foot distancing from one another in indoor public settings in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This ordinance will remain in effect until May 25th, 2021. Mary, roll call, please.
Frost.
Here.
McGowan.
Here.
Howard. Here. Kavanaugh.
Here.
Bagley.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Brent.
Here.
Open Meetings Act. I'd like to advise those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall in the boardroom. Now, for those who wish to participate, we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of the minutes of the committee and general board meeting from February 3rd.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Motion, please? Roll call?
Frost.
Aye.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook. Friend.
Yes.
I was muted, yes.
We could read your lips, Tanya. Agenda number 5, capital expenditures. Director Frost, please.
Under capital expenditures, these were discussed in committee, and I move for approval.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Frost.
Aye.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Under
Oh, go ahead.
Under acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates, these were discussed in committee, and I move for approval.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Frost. Aye.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Bids on materials and contracts during the month of November. These were discussed in committee, and I move for approval.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Frost.
Aye.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. Item number 8, main extensions, discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Corey O'Brien dated February 19th.
Second.
Was there a second? I didn't hear.
Yeah, second.
Okay, discussion? Roll call?
Frost.
Aye.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Item number 10, reimbursement resolutions associated with the bond issuances. I move to approve those resolutions as outlined and discussed in the committee meetings by Joe
We need
Joe
9.
Stafford. Sorry.
We need number 9.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead.
Shall I go
Thank you,
forward,
Tim.
Mr. Chair?
Pardon?
Can I go forward, Mr. Chair, with item 9?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all.
I just kind of excited.
Item number 9, wage and salary increases and ratifications. I move for approval in these items as were discussed in committee this morning and outlined in the memo from Bonnie Savine in the memo dated February 18, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Frost.
Aye.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Okay, now, agenda number 10. Reimbursement resolutions associated with the bond issuances. I move to approve those bond resolutions as discussed in committee this morning.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Frost.
Aye.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Number 11, I move we approve the purchase of approximately 52 acres adjacent to Blair High Road and State Street as outlined in Mr. Mendenhall's letter to the committee dated February 22nd, 2021.
Second.
Discussion?
I just want to remind the district to have a very comprehensive communication plan together for this project with the neighboring community and industrial businesses in the area.
Thank you, Tim. Any other discussion items? Roll call?
Frost.
Aye.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
12, I move we approve the proposed purchase of approximately 4.5 acres near State Street and Irvington Road, adjacent to the proposed secondary construction center site, as outlined in Mr. Mendenhall's letter dated February 22nd, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
13, I move we approve the second legislative report dated February 22nd, 2021, as presented by Mr. Kubot.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
14, I move we approve the condemnation authority and accompanying resolution as presented by Mr. Mendenhall and as outlined in his memo to the committee dated February 24th, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Frost.
Yes.
McGowan. McGowan.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Item number 15, other matters of district business for discussion. I believe we have 2 items. Mr. Hodgmore will provide another update on the district's COVID case management, vaccinations, et cetera, and the status of the HQ headquarters and returning employees to their work site.
Good morning, Steve Ostimore, Senior Vice President. So, 2 phases of this, our occupation or reoccupation phase. We remain in phase 1, which is up to 25% occupancy or more if we can manage to do so safely. With regard to the vaccinations and overall staffing, as of this week, 28% of district staff that's not in the field is working in district facilities. 93% of district staff total is working, 7% are off vacation or other leave provisions. Of that number, 2 employees are off for COVID-related matters. Since the pandemic begun, we've had 120 employee instances, or roughly a little less than 15% of the employee population was impacted directly by the coronavirus. 118 of those 120 have recovered. Specific to the vaccination, as far as our first dose of vaccine, predominantly Pfizer vaccine, 309 district employees, or 37% of the employee population, has received the first dose. This accounts for roughly or near 100% of the volunteers and mission critical personnel as determined by CISA, or the Department of Homeland Security. Second dose vaccinations are greater than 200 employees, and it continues currently. We're also currently petitioning the state DHHS to expand our exposure to vaccinations to get into what's considered non-critical, and in the case of the vernacular of the Department of Homeland Security, those that have the ability to work from home, we're trying to get into that population too. As far as staffing overall, nothing's changed, and we're still looking at Q3 of this year before we transition from phase 1 to phase 2, which would be no more than 50% of district employees working in district facilities. One item to note as well, we had anticipated that on or near the end of March is when we would have our first crack at the first dose of vaccinations. As it is now, again, over a third of the district has been vaccinated on the first round, and of that, 2/3 of that number has had the second round, and it's continuing now. So do you have any questions?
Steve, are the vaccinations being offered on site at M.U.D?
No. What we had planned is we partnered, as I'd stated before, with a healthcare partner, and it was Cole's Pharmacy, to do it on site. But then we got the call that if we were ready to go, we could get our folks in there. So again, we beat our own timeline by greater than a month for sure. But we went to clinics that they had stood up. So we sent our people basically in a moment's notice, and I can't recognize Bonnie Savine and Shane Hunter and their teams enough for doing basically the impossible of getting this many people through that clinic so quickly and efficiently with so little disruption. So we're really proud of their efforts. And a lot of it happened at the Rasmussen Clinic, similar to where Director McGowan got his.
Okay. Do you anticipate Colt offering these the vaccinations in the future? I remember last November going over and getting the pneumonia shot and the first shingle shot over there, and there were people coming in, which I thought was a good response to having it available right there for them.
Yeah, ultimately, we're going to take what we can get as soon as we can get it, right? So if that's the case and the timeline, excuse me?
No, I said that's a good plan.
You know, and that's what's happened.
You can get it.
Mm-hmm. And I had saw open source on the television that the government had the ambitious goal of fully vaccinating the entire country by the end of May. And that being said, again, it's an ambitious goal, and I don't know that we could stand up a clinic internally. Mm-hmm. If they're going at that rate, I'm guessing it's going to be all hands on deck at clinics. But again, time will tell. As it is right now, we're still pushing our folks through the clinics as much as possible and trying to get as many more additional through the clinic and seizing this opportunity while it's here.
And then they're reporting that they've gotten the vaccination. Is that kind of how it's working?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh, I'm assuming they're self-reporting that they've gotten the vaccination, so you have the numbers.
Yeah, and we maintain confidentiality with that. So the general employee population doesn't know who has not received the vaccine. With that being said, our protocols and our personal protective equipment and all of our procedures for prevention of the coronavirus persist and will persist through the duration until we can call this over.
Thank you.
Hey, Steve, are
You
you getting any feedback on any side effects from getting the vaccine?
Yeah, and I would say minor to moderate on the first dose, a little more significant on the second dose, and it's all happening really fast. So every day we're having real-time information coming in, and we are having some side effects. We're working around that with the employees. It is COVID related, right? So there's provisions to take care of the folks in that regard.
Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate the update. It's obviously a topic on everybody's mind. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The last thing on other matters of district business, I think Jim Knight has a few words he wants to share with us about the managing our way through the polar vortex here a couple of weeks ago. Hard to believe it's 60 degrees out now, but.
Good morning, everybody. This is Jim Knight, Vice President of Gas Operations. Yeah, it's Nebraska weather for sure. It's 60 degrees now, or no, Mike, I heard your question earlier. We are not using the LNG plant today. Gas sales are about 30% of what they were 2 weeks ago. That's how much they've dropped off. First of all, I'd like to thank the gas operations staff for their dedication during the February cold event. Gas operations includes gas production, systems control, gas distribution, and energy acquisitions. The gas production staff worked some long hours operating all 3 peak shaving plants for over a week. Of course, meeting our customers' gas needs for a peak winter day requires a lot of planning and efforts by all of our employees throughout the district. February send out was 27% over budget and the highest on record. As heating degree days were 30% above normal. Even though February sent out was very, very high, it had been warmer than normal November through February, or November through January, I should say. So the actual send out from November through February will only be 1% above normal. A new peak day send out was set on February 14th with a send out of 334,000 decatherms. Our previous peak day was 325,000 decatherms set back in January of 2019. We decided one record wasn't enough, so on the following day, on February 15th, our send out was 340,000 decatherms for that day. As I mentioned before, we utilized the peak shaving plants quite a bit during the month. The peak shaving plants, all 3 of them, they supplied 11% of our total gas send out for the entire month. And as Mr. Doyle had mentioned earlier, on the 14th and 15th, the peak shaving plants supplied 40% of our customers' gas supplies. We needed to run these plants as we saw gas prices increase quite a bit during the month. Prices I have never seen before in my 30 years of gas supply. Starting out at the beginning of the month, gas prices are around $3 a decatherm. We saw them trade as high as $400 a decatherm on Northern Natural Gas. We even saw some trades in Oklahoma as high as $1,000 a decatherm. The peak shaving plants, having this storage on site, enabled us to avoid purchasing this higher price gas. In total, the peak shaving plants enabled us to avoid $100 million in higher gas purchase costs for our customers. To put that in perspective, in 2020, our total gas purchase budget or cost, actual cost for the entire year was $87 million. So just over a week's time, they saved our customers an annual gas budget. I'd also like to put in
let me put that in perspective. If we didn't have our peak shaving and we had to go out in the spot market and buy this gas, you're saying it would, for that week, instead of peak shaving, we would have spent $100 million to meet our gas demands.
$100 million additional beyond what our peak shaving cost of gas was.
Wow. And let me put that in perspective. If we've talked about the LNG enhancement project, improvement program that we're starting to develop here in the next few years, where we upgrade the LNG and do a bunch of things at the LNG plant. If I recall right, Jim, that's $78 million over a number of years to really enhance the LNG capability. This savings that we had here just that week more than paid for that enhancement project for our customers.
Well, I want to add a little commentary here, Mr. McGowan and Jim. The only reason I think no doubt we're in a great position and we're safe, we're avoiding significant costs, but many gas utilities don't have these peak shaving assets. Our firm supply would be quite a bit different, Mr. McGowan, if we didn't have these facilities. So that's the only reason Joe and I are a little bit, we don't want to misrepresent what's happening here, but we also do not want to underestimate the savings that they provide. But do you know what I'm saying, Mr. McGowan?
If we didn't have the LNG and all that, our contract with Northern Natural Gas would be a lot more, our firm purchases would be more, our storage would be more, but those have additional costs as well. Absolutely, they would, but we wouldn't be sitting here with only the ability to put out 60% of what we put out. We just wouldn't. We've been reading stories of gas utilities all over the country. Some had gone out and purchased storage in early February anticipating this. Some have, there's all kinds of scenarios, and we wouldn't be sitting here on our heels, but I'm more committed to having 40% of our energy stored on site in the form of peak shaving than I ever have been, having gone through that. And when Jim says it's the first time he's ever seen that, that's a big deal. That's something, right, Jim? It is. Yes. It is a big deal, and I guess my point is whether we saved $100 million or $80 million, the value of those LNG and propane plants showed themselves during that peak spell. It showed the value of those and the value of having the project to enhance our LNG. And one of the things we've got to remember is right now, our LNG plant can only vaporize or liquefy at the one or the other. And we'll probably be starting to liquefy again in April or May. But right now, we cannot vaporize and liquefy, fill up and empty the tank at the same time. Under the new plant, we will be able to liquefy at the same time we're vaporizing. So as we pull some of the plant inventory down, we'll be able to put more in so we have more flexibility towards the end of the season. Couldn't agree more, but it's also like we talked about Platte West in many different ways. It became as much a reliability installation as a financial, and I think the same case is here, and I think Jim agrees, the reliability aspect and having your energy on site is paramount. I'll never underestimate the financial aspects, and I agree that LNG project is going to be a very well executed project that future generations of this utility will come to appreciate, just like we appreciate what has been delivered in the past in terms of our peak shaving assets. Thank you, Jim. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No problem. I've been talking about our peak shaving assets. I'd also like to mention our pipeline provider, Northern Natural Gas. They performed very well, even during some trying circumstances, and there were some significant impacts to gas production down in Texas and Oklahoma. Northern had their third highest throughput on record on February 11th. Northern met all of our contract requirements with Northern. They performed very well. As far as our gas supplies that we purchased from separately from different suppliers, we did very well there as well. We received 99.91% of all of our gas supplies. So even with a lot of freeze-offs going on around the country, our suppliers did very well.
Jim, I thought Northern Natural called a force majeure one morning for a short period of time.
They called a force majeure, and that was related to underperformance in their field area in Texas and Oklahoma. That was just people were nominating and scheduling gas supplies, but the actual well production was not keeping up with what people were nominating. That was the issue.
But it did not impact their deliveries to us.
Absolutely, correct. We got 100% of our firm. Our firm was never impacted.
Good, thank you.
As we were discussing, our peak shaving plants shielded our customers for some of these from some of the gas price spikes. Over the remainder of the year, we're estimating that our customers will only see an additional $3.30 on their gas bills from April through December, related to some of the additional propane that was used last month. Other utilities, we've read several articles. Other utilities such as CenterPoint, which is Minnesota's largest gas provider, is estimating that customers will see an additional $300 to $400 in gas cost over the next 12 months. Xcel Energy, another large provider in Minnesota, is estimating $250 to $300 over the next year. Mid-American is estimating a $200 increase for residential customers over the next year. Black Hills has not provided any estimates at this point. That's all I have for right now, and I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
Jim, I don't know if this is your area of expertise. Oh, first off, thank you. Thank you for that good report. Thank God for the people that went ahead of us and had the good sense to install the storage plants and all the rest of it. But my question is, are you aware, or can you give me information on if people are utilizing the federal COVID relief funds to catch up on their gas bills, or how is that all working?
I think I will turn that over to, I think Steph Mueller would be better to answer some of those questions.
Okay,
Steph?
Thank you.
Good morning, Stephanie Mueller, Vice President, Corporate Communications. Thank you for the question, Director Howard. We have received another $1 million from Douglas County. The program started February 22nd, and we anticipate that those funds will be used up by early next week. And at this point, there are other funds available through the City of Omaha and through Douglas County, and they are using partnering agencies within Omaha to deliver those funds.
And you're seeing people, obviously, you're seeing people utilize this and they're aware of it, and they're using it as an opportunity to kind of get themselves in a better situation financially with us.
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, the program only will run about 2 weeks before that $1 million is gone. And so I think that the word has gotten out and people are definitely using those funds. Absolutely.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that. That's what they're there for.
Yes.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any more questions for Jim or Stephanie? Okay, well, thank you both, Steve and Jim, for those reports. Those are items of very good interest to all of us. Do any of the board members have any further comments? One last question for me to Mark Doyle. It's that time of the year for State of the District district report. Have you thought about any timing? I don't know if I have anything in mind, but I just want to plant the seed that we'd like you to think about it and let us know when you think you'll be wanting to give that report.
So I had a discussion with Mark Doyle, President. I had a discussion with staff and the communications area this week, and I'm tentatively targeting May, if that would meet the board's plans. That's what we're shooting for, and I'll give you a better update next month. Is that okay?
That'd be great. May or June would be fine with me, because I know you guys have been so busy and everything. It's very important that you give that to us, and we want you to have time to plan it and do it properly, but we don't want to intrude on all the work you guys are doing.
Well, I thank you for that. We've been talking about it, and I've certainly been thinking about it. I reviewed the past State of the District presentations, and it's really a presentation of all of us, not me. I just get the honor of delivering it. And I want to take 1 second to back up to Jim Knight's presentation, and I want to underscore what Jim said when he started, that the staff that he mentioned and everybody involved performed in an exemplary manner. They were ready for it, anticipated it, and did well. They're second to none. So thanks to everybody from those that run the LNG plant, the propane air plant, back in the office with acquisition and supply. It builds my confidence, and it should build your confidence as our elected representatives. So I just wanted to underscore that, Jim. Thank you.
Besides all the gas plants and all that, our folks at the water facilities, water plants did a great job too, keeping the water flowing, which is very important.
Absolutely. Never want to thank you for saying that.
So, and I just want to say on behalf of the board, I couldn't be more prouder than of the employees, from the management to everybody in the field. The dedication and commitment to keep the water and gas flowing during that during that spike of cold weather was very admirable and made me very proud to be part of this organization. Thank you. Okay, any other comments?
Mike, one last thing really quick.
I would just ask that we have no more surprises for about a year so we can kind of level out here and then bring on the next one. Sorry, Mr. Begley, go ahead.
No problem. I was just going to remind everybody that this Saturday is the virtual Heat the Streets Run and Walk for Warmth. You can go to heatthestreetsomaha.org to register. So I just want to pass that along.
Okay, great. And Tanya, you're the honorary chair, right?
I am. So
Did I steal your thunder, Tanya? I'm sorry. Did I steal your thunder?
Oh no, thank you for doing that. I was going to jump in, but I wanted everybody else to get a chance. I'm looking forward to it on Saturday. I think we're going to have good weather, and to do your walk, as I mentioned, it's only really 7,000 steps, so it should be doable. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I would like to reiterate that due to COVID-related precautions, members of the public have access to this meeting via WebEx connection that is set up in a conference room adjacent to the boardroom at the headquarters building. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the board at this time? And if so, please indicate your intentions to the moderator.
Director McGowan, there is no public representation at this time. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We will now go into closed session for the purpose of discussing litigation. Do we have a motion?
I'm moving we go into closed session for the purpose of litigation.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Frost.
Aye.
McGowan.
Yes.
Howard. Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
And Howard says yes also when she unmutes it.
Yes, sir. Do we have a motion to return to open session?
So moved.
Discussion? Roll call.
Frost.
Aye.
McGowan.
Yes?
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Frost.
Aye.
McGowan.
Yes?
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Thank you all. We are now adjourned. Good meeting.